India's top 4 IT companies have reported their earnings for the July to September quarter, and the verdict is clear. The Indian IT players are still reeling under the pain of the global economic slowdown, and recovery still seems a few quarters away. Hello and welcome to the special show, the IT Report Card. I'm Chandrasekhar. Over the next 30 minutes, we will discuss what has caused the pain for the Indian IT sector. Number 1, increasing protectionism in the US economy. Number 2, increasing costs due to increased local hiring in the US and other geographies like Europe and Australia. Number 3, constraints in spending from North America leading to a drop in the order book. Number 4, banking and financial services clients in US tightening spending. And finally, a complete shift in the IT landscape from traditional services to digital services. Now, the top 4 reasons for the pressure seen in IT companies all stem from increased scrutiny and tightening from the United States on the H-1B visa front. Now, US-based clients, which form a significant portion of IT spending for Indian IT players, have hit the pause button in many cases due to uncertainties around policies in the Trump era. The most direct impact comes from the tightening in immigration and visa policies. The policies have only made it tougher for the Indian IT companies to apply for visas like H-1B and L-1 visa, and has also increased costs for firms that rely on them. I caught up with the president of NASSCOM, Chandrasekhar, and started by asking him about the latest executive order introduced by the US government, which makes it tougher for foreign companies to extend H-1B visas. Listen in.
Kritika, you're right. Actually, while there have not been any major material changes, because as we all know, legislative changes go through the Congress.
Yeah.
But what we have seen in the during the current year, under the new dispensation, is a steady stream of executive orders.
Okay.
Each of which slightly make the process a little more onerous, a little more time-consuming, or a little more difficult,
okay,
or expensive. So what we are seeing is, even in the case of this order, it does not substantially change anything materially. Adjudication at the time of extension was a part of the process. And the conditions have not changed, namely that if there is a misrepresentation of facts at the original time, or if the conditions have changed substantially, then it becomes a matter of judgment by the adjudicator. What I think the subtle change is that earlier it was only an exceptional case where that would happen, and the onus really, in a sense, was, or appeared to be, on the federal agencies to show that there has been some material change, whereas now it has shifted the other way around, saying it's the responsibility of the applicant to show that nothing has changed. So it's a subtle shift, but it's in line and in tune with the general tenor of the changes that we have been seeing. We saw earlier the process of expedited processing getting stopped. Exactly. Then we saw more extreme vetting of applications. Then we saw greater time being taken for processing. Then we saw statements and by leading figures in the administration talking about the need to place curbs. We've seen some hearings also even in the legislature, while no legislation has been passed, which tended to bring out the H-1B in a poor light. Whereas the fact is, and this has been reiterated often enough, that this is a mechanism by which skilled people go into the US and fill a major gap which exists in the US economy. So these changes, I think, are certainly, while each one may be of little significance, taken together, collectively they seem to be very slowly and slowly tightening the whole process.
Chandra, what's the impact been over the last 6 months? Because if I'm correct, in the last 6 months to 1 year, to be fair, there have been these series of different small orders that have come which have led to the collective tightness. To an extent, is that the reason why there is a cautiousness or volatility in the Indian IT sector?
You see, first of all, let me take this in two parts. Over the last couple of years, the number of applications by Indian IT companies has fallen by 50%.
Okay,
More
in the
than
last
50%.
2 years?
In the last 2 years.
Okay.
And of course, in the recent past, that trend remains in place. And this is largely because of all the negativity surrounding the H-1B. But on the other hand, as I said, it's not as if materially things have changed substantially. The other reason for these big changes is that the direction in which both technology and business are moving in this space, and that those changes are happening at a much faster pace, as well as with a much greater impact. You know, the shift is more towards, for example, delivering business value, a combination of technology, domain and consulting, along with some amount of innovation. So the mix in terms of skills, technology skills versus domain skills, the mix in terms of offshore and on-site component is changing continuously due to business and technology dynamics. So those changes, in a sense, are bigger drivers at the moment than any of these changes which have taken place. But nonetheless, given that this is an industry and a sector which does depend heavily on skilled professionals.
Large, and it is reliant on H-1B and L-1 significantly.
Absolutely. Because these skills are in short supply globally, even for companies. These are resources which are moved around. They are not stationary. Either they are mobile within that geography or they are even mobile across countries and across continents. So therefore, mobility of such high-skilled resources is an important element of you know, the whole digital economy and the you know, delivering that digital transformation for client companies.
Correct. The External Affairs Minister has brought up the issue of H-1B visa just yesterday, in fact, in the conversations. But has there been, because, you know, we've been talking about this, Chandra, for the last 3 years. Since 2015, 2014, we've been talking about this. There hasn't been any development per se. Will H-1B visas, with the increased scrutiny, increased curbs, will they gradually reduce? 50% drop in 2 years. Will that drop continue?
Well, as I said, you know, the government has been taking up this issue. We had both the External Affairs Minister and the Finance Minister taking it up. Later this week, we have the strategic and commercial dialogue in which the Commerce Minister also would be there. So these issues, I think, are being taken up. However, you know, as I said, we have not seen too much of positive developments. There have been minor negative developments, but a large number of them which collectively have dampened the sort of mood or the tempo. But as I said, there are other drivers also which are happening. And given that the fundamental problem of skill shortage in the US is not going to be solved by any of this, because that's the basic problem. So if you put more constraints on skilled people coming in, then the shortage will manifest itself even more sharply, and either the work will have to be shipped overseas or the work will simply not get done. So those are still dynamics which will play out. And I think we will have to see how it goes. But clearly, companies are working on their business strategies, taking all of these aspects into account.
Chandra, when you speak to IT companies, what's been the impact on cost? I understand you can't give a specific number, but by how much has a cost increased as a result of these changes over the last few months?
See, it's very difficult, as you also say, to put a very specific number, because these numbers vary, you know, with the particular sector, with the particular country, with the particular. So it's a highly variable thing for individual companies. So it does, yes, it does affect. The short point is, yes, it does affect the margins a little bit at the moment.
And is that the reason that last 1 year or last 1.5 years, margins have been very constrained? They are trying to work on operational levers, you know, through digitization, etc. But margins have been constrained significantly because of the pressure in North America.
You know, what I told you earlier applies even with respect to the margins. Namely, that there are multiple factors involved. It's not just one factor or the other. And among these multiple factors, technology and business dynamics are the bigger factor. So this is compounding those issues, but it is not the primary cause of those issues.
Okay. You already said, Chandra, that there have been 4 to 5 areas where smaller orders have come, slightly more than that. Are there more immediate, smaller changes that are expected in the near term?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see. That
you seem to be
always,
prepared.
that always depends on the imaginativeness of a bureaucracy.
Okay.
But having said that, I don't think we can rule out such measures. There have been different measures which have been taken with regard to immigration, some of which don't actually affect the IT sector, but which have also provoked a significant backlash from American businesses, including the entire IT industry, who also took, 100 of whom took a particular matter to the courts as well. So I think that people in the technology sector in the US, business leaders in the technology sector in the US, have also emphasized the imperative for the US economy of enabling and ensuring access to skilled workforce from across the globe for the US technology industry and for technology adoption by other businesses in the US to thrive. So I think there's a mix of politics and economics in this, and it's quite possible that politics is the dominant force.
But the fact is that now Indian IT companies that are already reducing dependence on visas will have to further reduce it in near term.
As I said, companies are working out their strategy, and the strategy is based on a whole lot of things: the business dynamics, the visa regulation, where the bigger opportunities are, and all of that. So this becomes a part of that factoring in. As you also would know, there is an increasing move towards digital side of the business, and traditional areas are either remaining flat or even reducing. So naturally, this gravitation towards a greater mix of digital in the portfolio of business is also something that companies are doing, and that again ties in with the business and consulting and innovation becoming almost as important or more important than even the technology piece itself. So these are continuous changes which companies are adapting to, and it has implications for their own workforce, for the kind of people they hire, for the kind of skills they need to either hire or build or continue to enhance.
Well, that was the NASSCOM President R. Chandrasekhar sounding a cautious note on the visa issues and talking about what lies ahead for the sector. We also posed the same question to the CFO, that is the Chief Financial Officer of Mindtree. Here's what he had to say on protectionism.
Trend of nationalization, tighter immigration controls, etc., is a global phenomenon right now. It doesn't hurt us that much from an immigration perspective. One, because we are not that dependent on visas. Our number of visas applied, etc., are very, very less. And we have been implementing programs to recruit locally in all the large markets where we are present over a long time. For example, in the US, we have a fairly active campus recruitment program. So therefore, we're not as dependent on the sort of immigration-related issues like the rest of the industry there. But this is a phenomenon that I think we'll need to learn to deal with.
Okay, so that was the Mindtree CFO on how Mindtree is trying to squash the protectionism issue. We'll take a quick break on that note, but when we return, we'll see how the big 4 IT companies have performed in the second quarter of FY18. Stay tuned for that.